Most people, the orthodoxy felt that the fire had gone out in Anthony's eyes, that he wouldn't go into the dark places.
The loss to Alexander Usyk, I think that he gained a lot from that fight.
Well, I have changed my opinion. I used to really like Tyson Fury. Now I think he's a bit of a tit. Eddie Hearn, who's jumping up and down going, I can smell it. Now I know what you can smell, Eddie. You can smell pound notes. That's what
Absolutely.
You can smell, and fair play.
This was always the plan, to get Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury for the undisputed.
Welcome to episode 79 of Talk Boxing with myself, Simon Jordan, and of course, the inimitable, diminutive Spencer Oliver. Nice to be back from Germany.
Yes, how was your holiday, Simon?
Well, it wasn't a holiday, Spence. It was a labour of love.
Okay.
It wasn't a lot of love, and there was a significant amount of labour. So I'm really pleased to be back because I've been surrounded by football for the last 2 weeks, and I've missed the boxing.
You've missed me.
I have missed you. I have missed you. It comes a point in my life when I realise that you might be the purveyor of common sense. That's when you've reached rock bottom. But what I like in this particular setup is the distance between us. There's quite some distance.
There's a lot of distance between us.
Whilst I was away, you know, we had Chris Eubank on the show, which was nice to see Chris, and it was really pleasing to see him get such a response. We had him on one of the shows in Germany, where he came on the Thursday because we were watching England play against Denmark in Frankfurt, and he came on. There was a big audience that had assembled to watch the show, and he got a really good reaction from the fans there, and really pleasing for Chris to get that sort of recognition and potentially that sort of opportunity next against Ramirez that gives him proper payday. So I was so that was my sort of little bit of boxing that I managed to get involved with whilst I was over there. But what I saw last week was you in conversation with Frank Warren about a whole raft of things. But one of the things that came up was Frank's observation on some of the things that me had been saying. And I found it interesting how these boxing people go very tin-eared and only hear what they want to hear. Because Frank, I think, was talking about the issues of me writing a column in the Mail about Tyson Fury and his potential redemption and ascent to the rarefied air of, you know, the immortals of people that have come back and won things back. And he didn't like that. He felt that was unfair. And also, I think he said as well, am I right, Spence, about the fact that I aren't able to change my opinion. I have an opinion on something and I'm not able to change it.
Yeah, I think that what Frank was upset about was the bipolar situation with Tyson Fury, and maybe being a little unfair towards him on that situation. And I think that's what really upset him, I think, you know, with this whole Tyson Fury thing. He said, listen, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but with Tyson Fury, he is diagnosed with bipolar, and you know, and he felt it was unfair.
See, that's an interesting one for me, because Frank, I think, was saying, if I'm right, in the bit that I glanced, that I'm not able to change my opinion. Well, I have changed my opinion. I used to really like Tyson Fury. Now I think he's a bit of a tit. So I have changed my opinion. So I'm perfectly capable of pivoting off an opinion, and I have changed my opinion on lots of things. But it's interesting, these boxing guys, how they take up a particular set of beliefs, like the idea that the only part of bipolarity is that you can be unpleasant, right? There's people that are bipolar that can be perfectly pleasant as well. And the only time that Tyson has gotten criticised, because we never brought it up, Frank brought it up, and brought it up in the middle of a conversation for no reason, seemingly going to a script. And the interesting thing for me was that I spent some time with a neurophysicist, as is my wont, who said to me, I listened to that Frank Warren interview that you had. He said, the interesting thing about bipolarity is that one of the things that will exacerbate it and make it worse is boxing, getting punched in the head for a living. That will make it worse. So if Frank and those around Tyson Fury are so concerned about his well-being as a result of bipolarity, maybe they shouldn't allow him to box anymore.
Right, okay.
Won't do that though, will they? Won't stop that particular gravy train. So the sort of hypocrisy...
Well, I think boxing gives him a sense of direction, a sense of discipline,
I don't doubt it.
I think that boxing ultimately is very, very good for Tyson Fury. As we know, he's had his troubles outside of the ring, and I think that boxing keeps him on that straight and narrow.
The point I'm making is that if you're going to wheel a mental health condition into a conversation, then the other side of that is that maybe you have to look at it and say, well, if neurophysicists are suggesting that ultimately the worst thing you can do with someone with bipolar is put them into a boxing ring, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
If you're going to wheel that conversation out, nobody asked Frank to come on a conversation and start a debate about Tyson Fury with a pre-prepared script reading off an NHS website about what bipolarity involves. And it doesn't excuse bad behaviour, but also on the column side of things, I think that given what we've listened to from Tyson, and given the fact that I wrote a column that I expect him to come back and do well, because he was the one that told us that Alexander Usyk was a middleweight and wasn't able to compete with him, and he was the one that told us he was a generational great, and all I did in that article was really right, in the same way that over a period of time, and I don't know if you agree with this, Lennox Lewis established himself as potentially an all-time great. Muhammad Ali inevitably did by going back and reclaiming, and in order for Tyson Fury, irrespective of beating Dillian Whyte and beating Derek Chisora and beating Deontay Wilder 3 times, not 2, because he did beat him 3 times, even though the first one was scored as a draw. It is important that if we are to believe that Tyson is what he prescribes to be, goes back and wins his world title back. Absolutely. I think that's a fair comment.
Absolutely. Listen, look, it's all about legacies, isn't it? And Tyson Fury has to go and right the wrongs of that last fight. You know, he has to do that. You know, we talked about that. I think with Frank, he was upset with just the whole condition and bringing that into the boxing, and I think that's where he was at with it.
They spend their life these days, it seems to be, in a permanent state of upset about the misrepresentations of what people have actually said. We had to listen to the fact that once upon a time, Usyk's team suggested that Tyson Fury was ducking the fight. We just listened to that and said, well, if he is doing that, that's not very good. And then we got told that we were the ones that were saying that he ducked the fight. So it would appear that they only listen to what they want to listen to and then misrepresent it backwards. But Frank does what Frank does best, which is, you know, put his best foot forward and perhaps cloud the observations that are being made. But look, the fact is that we've got great fights going on. And I do personally believe, I don't know about you, I personally believe that Fury will beat Usyk. There's most people would say that's probably not the case.
Yeah,
most people would suggest that Fury's now done. And I do think that what Tyson said the other day, and what you thought about that, was that he was enjoying himself in that fight and it was too easy for him.
Yeah,
was a little bit silly.
I didn't understand that at all, if I'm totally honest. But I'm with you, Simon. I do believe that Tyson Fury does win the rematch in December. I think that tactically he got it totally wrong. I think he underestimated Alexander Usyk. He underestimated his strength, his speed. He underestimated everything, and I think that was a big mistake, and he started too late. I think he'll right the wrongs of the last one. I do, yeah.
So, moving on from that little placeholder of correcting people when they make observations which aren't steeped in fact, we move on to what is factual, which is a really significant fight card for September the 21st, which is an Earth, Wind and Fire song, isn't it? Do you remember the 21st night in September? We'll remember this one.
Please spare me.
Oh, God, absolutely. We'll remember this one because we've got a great fight card, but at the top of that fight card is an intriguing heavyweight fight between the newly installed and quite frankly deserving champion Daniel Dubois, because he should have really been fighting Hrgovic for the IBF anyway.
Absolutely,
so he's beaten Hrgovic. So the people that say that maybe he didn't handed the belt, you know, he should have been fighting Hrgovic for the IBF strap anyway. So he's pretty much won it by definition. So he's the champion against Anthony Joshua. It's looking like a pretty significant event. You know, Liam Gallagher is apparently going to play there. Be even bigger if he got his brother to play with him. I mean, maybe I'll drag Noel along because he came to the last fight.
Listen,
that'll be a surprise, wouldn't it? That'll be a surprise. Noel waving at his brother, a bit like that probably. But that's a different discussion. This is what Anthony Joshua wanted, wasn't it? This is the ultimate redemption journey for him. He wanted to be 3 times heavyweight champion of the world. These are a rare breed. And as a result of it, it's something Tyson Fury will aspire to be himself. But this is what Joshua wanted. He's in against Dubois. What are you making of this fight? You've seen a video surface. I don't know how much of a constructed or confected environment it was, but when Frank's sitting on one side, Eddie's on the other side, and it all gets a bit leery, and Anthony threatens to hit him around the head with a chair and doesn't like disrespect and so on and so forth. What do you make of this fight alongside Daniel Dubois and his rehabilitation, because there's been accusations about his inability to cope with the mental side of dealing with the best heavyweights, Joyce, Alexander Usyk, and now, you know, the poster boy for world boxing for such a long time, heavyweight boxing, certainly Anthony Joshua.
Yeah, listen, I think that, look, rewind 12 months and we couldn't see the roadmap for Anthony Joshua. I mean, I think you was quite doubtful that Joshua would actually become a 3-time world heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
You know, because we couldn't see where it was going to go. And look, he's got the opportunity. Daniel Dubois made up a lot of ground. You know, I think the teaming up with Don Charles has been brilliant. I think it's not about the physicalities with Daniel Dubois, it was more about the psychological side and the believing in himself. And he does believe in himself now, and I think we've seen that in his recent performances. The performance against Hrgovic was brilliant. The thing that concerns me is the amount of times he was getting hit with a right hand against Hrgovic. He can't do that with Anthony Joshua.
Yeah.
Anthony Joshua is a totally different kettle of fish. And so, look, I think it's a great fight. It's a dangerous fight. Anthony Joshua obviously starts the favourite, but Daniel Dubois is a dangerous fight.
Yeah. I mean, I look at the Hrgovic fight, and I don't want to take anything away from Dubois, but Hrgovic was begging to lose a fight at some point because he was lucky against Zhilei Zhang, wasn't he? He was lucky against McCain.
Yeah.
Dempsey McCain, wasn't
yeah.
he? You know, he's laboured through that fight. Well, Mark Demori was a punch bag.
Yeah, right? I think that you're right in what you say. I think that he has looked very laboured in recent performances, and I think that it was inevitable that he was going to get beat at some point. I think Daniel Dubois taking nothing away from him in his performance. He went out there and he showed us that, you know, he's got that grit and determination, and he just kept pushing. That will to win was so important for him. But, you know, Hrgovic was slightly disappointing, yeah, but Daniel Dubois had done the job on him, and I think that was very, very important.
This is a fascinating scenario because there is a perception, and I'm not pushing back against it. I'm just evaluating it for the purpose of this conversation, Spence. You made a point a moment ago that I didn't see a pathway back for Anthony Joshua to win a world title again, and I wasn't alone in that because most people, the orthodoxy, felt that the fire had gone out in Anthony's eyes, that he wouldn't go into the dark places that he might have to go into and put himself in a way of harm as he once was prepared to do before. Now, I would ask you, as a fighting man that knows precisely what it's like to be in that situation, Joshua's redeemed himself, and I was delighted that he put boxing back in the map the way that Fury didn't do with the Ngannou fight.
Yeah.
Get rid of the mixed martial art guy, as a boxer should do, with no disrespect to Ngannou. But Dubois is going to hit him back. Right? Franklin didn't hit him back. Helenius didn't hit him back. Wallin didn't hit him back, and neither did Ngannou. Now, you're possibly going to say that, you know, that's because he didn't allow them to. But I still think there's a possibility with the power that Dubois has. If he detonates one on Anthony Joshua, he's going to get PTSD.
Absolutely.
He's going to be reminded of the challenges that he's had previously, and it might take him back to a different space because despite all the redemption in the last 4 fights, Dubois is going to hit him back.
Absolutely. Listen, Daniel Dubois will go straight at him from the opening bell. Yeah. I think that will be the game plan. You know, like I say, Don Charles knows Anthony Joshua very well. I think Dubois would take the fight straight to him, and he'd roll the dice early.
This version of Anthony Joshua, the Ben Davidson infused version.
Yeah, listen,
he doesn't know that
this version
of
Anthony Joshua now, the self-belief is there, and that was what was missing. Nothing else, just the self-belief. He didn't believe in himself. He wasn't stepping in with his shots. He wasn't putting the punches together. He's now got that confidence, and that makes him a totally different animal. Very, very dangerous. But like I say, Dubois has always got a chance because he will take the fight straight to him. And if he lands a shot, he's very heavy-handed. Anything can happen.
Is he sophisticated enough? I mean, is it wrong for me to say that Daniel Dubois lacks a degree of sophistication? He's really a puncher. And ultimately, the intelligence, the boxing intelligence and the experience that Anthony Joshua has accumulated over a litany of fights and time is going to be a very compelling part of how this fight shapes up.
You would think so, definitely. You know, but I think that it's a battle of the jabs. Whoever finds a range with the jabs, gets off of them shots, gets off of the right hand. But like I say, Daniel Dubois will take the fight straight to him. He'll go straight at him, and that makes him very, very dangerous. Look, Anthony Joshua, for me, is better in all departments. And I think experience plays a massive part in this as well. You know, the losses that Anthony Joshua had, he's gone away, he's rebuilt, he's regained that confidence, and that is so, so important. But, like I say, like, you know, anything can happen in this fight because Dubois will take it straight to him. He's a good fighter, Dubois.
Is he?
He is.
So is my observation...
He's a good fighter.
Because, I mean, I remember 3-4 years ago, watching him against Joyce, sitting with Jeff Powell from the Mail, who had recently written an article about the nature of the heavyweight landscape, and that this guy, Dubois, was the next coming, and forget Joshua, forget Fury. You're going to see Daniel Dubois ascend to the top of the mountain. Is my observation then subsequently unfair that he will lack the sophistication required to unseat Anthony Joshua in this fight?
Yeah, because, you know, I think that he's gained a lot of confidence. I'll tell you, the moulding of Daniel Dubois actually was the loss to Alexander Usyk. I think that he gained a lot from that fight. He went back. That was the first fight he had with Don Charles. They've been working on stuff in the gym. I've actually seen him working on stuff in the gym, and he's gained a lot of confidence. And I think that, you know, we saw that in the performance against Filip Hrgović.
Yeah.
And that makes him a dangerous guy. You know, like I say, like, Joshua is better in all departments, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to get tagged. And if he gets tagged, you know, Daniel Dubois is very heavy-handed.
Power, yeah.
We'll see how it goes. But it's a very, very, very interesting fight. If you was talking about this fight, I don't know, 18 months ago, it was a non-event for me. Non-event. But Dubois has made up a lot of ground, and I think that, you know, he's a threat.
I thought Anthony conducted the press conference very well. I thought he was articulate and eloquent. I mean, we all go around the table listening to everybody thank Turki Al-Sheikh and whoever else they want to thank for this opportunity, and then go off on some tangent about something or another. Whereas Anthony spoke, I thought, very articulately about the way he lives his life and the fact that he used boxing to get away from things, not to steer into things, which was bad behaviour and indiscipline. Do you think styles, in this instance, we often say styles make fights. Do you think the style of these two fighters brings out an absolutely phenomenal fight?
Absolutely. This could be a 3-round fight.
So I
truly believe that, because stylistically, they will both go straight at it. Anthony Joshua doesn't move on the back foot, nor does Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois will be more aggressive than Anthony Joshua, but he has to be careful he doesn't walk onto one in the process. But Joshua, equally, he's aggressive as well. So it will be a very explosive fight. I don't believe it probably goes 3-4 rounds.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Was, you know, how do you see this fight manifesting itself? My first reaction was, I don't think it sees the 7th round. I think it goes within 6.
No.
And I think that the jab is very important. And both of these, you know, we saw the double jab that Dubois was throwing against Hrgović and how effective it was. But I think Anthony Joshua is a different animal to Filip Hrgović.
Absolutely, yeah.
So my feelings is that Anthony will have too much for Dubois. What's yours?
Yeah, exactly the same. I think that, like,
well, you would have, because you're a fully paid up member of his fan club.
No, but Don Charles is a very good friend of mine as well. He's training Daniel Dubois. Daniel's in my gym, so I see him, you know, on a regular basis. It's a difficult one for that reason. Yeah. But Anthony Joshua, go back a long way with Joshua, but I just think he's more rounded, more seasoned, and I think that he'll get off with the shots first. But like I say, you can't write Dubois off, because you're right in what you say. He's like, whoever establishes that jab first, they get into range, let the right hand go, anything can happen.
Has the potential, as they build it up, because it's Wembley Stadium, because of the scale of the operation and the scale of the event, to be a really, I mean, British fights are always brilliant, aren't they? And there's always this extra jeopardy when we have a domestic dust-off of significance. I mean, I remember Frank Bruno fighting Lennox Lewis, and I think that was at Tottenham Hotspur, wasn't it?
No, Cardiff.
Was it at Cardiff?
Yeah.
Okay. And the nature of the interest and intrigue in that fight, this is on a different scale, because you've got 90,000 people being packed into Wembley, and all that goes with it. It's a fight that I wonder if Anthony Joshua would have preferred to fight Hrgović, because the reason why I say that is, if he were to lose to Dubois, there's this legacy argument about losing to another British fighter and all that goes with it. Obviously, Frank came back from losing to Lennox Lewis, went back round, beat the guy that beat Lennox Lewis in Oliver McCall, and got his redemption and his vindication as a result of that. But if Anthony were to lose this fight, it's difficult to see where he goes next.
Well, of course. At this stage of his career, it is a must-win fight. I think this is what he's been aiming for. He wanted to become 3-time world champion, and I don't think he wasn't bothered who was in front of him. You know, whether that was Filip Hrgović, Daniel Dubois, the mission is to become 3-time world heavyweight champion. But like you say, legacies are on the line, and you're remembered for boxing other Brits. I mean, it's it's a historic fight. Wembley Stadium, 90,000. They're talking about maybe even 100,000. That's what they're pushing for. And yeah.
It's a great event. I mean, I loved the demented Jackabox in Eddie Hearn, who's jumping up and down going, I can smell it. Now, I know what you can smell, Eddie. You can smell pound notes. That's what Absolutely. You can smell. And fair play, so can everybody else. But I just think this is how I think it will play out. And we discussed it about a month ago, I think. I just got this feeling, and most people will go, you're talking at the back of your head, he's done. I've got a feeling that Fury will beat Usyk, and you'll get an undisputed between Fury and Joshua, because I think if Usyk beats Fury, I think he'll scatter the belts. Yeah. And I don't think he'll allow someone else to have an undisputed opportunity. He'll go down in history, the first person to do it for 25 years, and he won't allow Joshua or anyone else to have an undisputed opportunity off the back of his achievements of uniting all the belts, will he?
Totally agree with that. I think that this was always the plan, to get Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury for the undisputed. And you know, I'm with you on that. I think that Tyson Fury wins the fight. If he does win that fight, Anthony Joshua comes through, which we're expecting he does.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a huge fight. One of the biggest fights in history.
Imagine the furore if that fight happens, when it's not made in the UK. I'm not criticising the Saudis.
Do you not think it's going to be in the UK?
I'd be fascinated to see if it will be, because it will be the biggest fight in heavyweight boxing for some time. I think it will be bigger than Usyk versus Fury for the first fight. I think it will be bigger than anything we've seen before, because you've got the two generational perceived greats. Anthony Joshua for all his achievements, for the fact that he's raised the bar on boxing economically and profile-wise. Fury because ultimately of what he is, the showman that he is, how he divides opinion and perceptions of him in terms of what he's achieved and what he hasn't achieved, the uniqueness of his performances against Deontay Wilder when he came back from all the breaks, all the noise. Yeah. And everyone's been wanting this fight. And it's also, it's two British fighters fighting for an undisputed situation that very rarely happens, and it's two British fighters fighting for it. The scale of it will be enormous.
Surely for the history books, it has to land in Britain.
Well, on the charm offensive that the Saudis are waging, you would think that they might read that memo and perhaps be prepared to do it. We'll see. But irrespective of where it is, we'll be seeing something that's significant if it does happen. I want to go on to the undercard, because there was a lot of noise was made, and a lot of interest is being brought forward by the nature of the undercard. I mean, we've got great fights in there. We've got Mark Chamberlain, who we know apparently is Turkey Al-Sheikh's favourite fighter. Yeah. We've got Josh Kelly fighting Liam Smith. And nice to see Liam back in the mix, because I'm a big fan of the Smith brothers. Anthony Kakachi against Josh Warrington. I spoke to Josh last week, who was slightly self-effacing about people questioning as to why should he be on this card. I don't know, you know, he may have lost a few fights recently, but he's a two-time
world champion. Listen, he deserves
and I think he deserves to be there.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Josh Boatsy, I spent a bit of time with Ben and George last week, putting them together to try and help make this particular fight, which they've done. And so I think that's a great fight.
It's a great fight, yeah.
And I think a real opportunity for Josh Boatsy to stamp his credentials, to restamp them. I mean, everybody wanted...
that's a tough fight, you know. Willie Hutchinson can fight, trust me.
Yeah. And then you've got, obviously, the fight that precedes the main card, or the main event, which is Tyler Denny versus Hamza Sheeraz. I mean, I had my little issues with Hamza Sheeraz punching Bradley Skeet when he's on the floor. Yeah. But there's no doubt that he's a world-class operator, or getting to that point.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is a good fight for the boxing fans, for the boxing aficionados, and also for the casual audience, because Tyler Denny's come out of a very difficult background with opportunities not necessarily being his, and Hamza Sheeraz comes with real quality.
Absolutely.
A great fight.
Absolutely. Look, do you know what? I love this story of Tyler Denny. You know, if you go back like a couple of years, you know, he's trying to sell 80 tickets to be able to fight on a small hall show, just to cover his purse for a Midlands area title. He's done it the hard way. He's grafted and he's got there, and it is all about opportunity. And he's got that opportunity against Hamza Sheeraz. But Sheeraz is a top fighter. I mean, Ammo Williams last time out, you know, I think he systematically just blasted him away, and Liam Williams as well. You know, you just look at him and you just think he oozes class. I think it's only a matter of time before he wins a world title. It's going to be a tough night for Tyler Denny, but spoke to him at the press conference the other day.
Confident.
And he's up for it.
Yeah.
He's up for it, you know. It's all about opportunity, and he will go for it.
What about we touched upon a moment ago by reading off the fights. Obviously, Josh, I think the public really wanted to see Boatsy versus Yard, and hopefully that situation will rectify itself between Queensberry and Yard, and I think there was attempts to make Yard versus Boatsy with Boxer that was potentially pushed back on and leave the situation between Queensberry and whatever contractual obligation they do or don't have over Yard to sort itself out. Hutchinson gave himself a lot of credence as a result of his performance against Craig Richards.
Yeah.
I mean, Craig Richards has flatlined a little bit now, hasn't he? He went from that career best performance, albeit he lost it, against Bivol, where most people felt he could have won that fight if he believed in himself, to a loss to Josh Boatsy, to now a loss to Willie Hutchinson. Josh, for me, should win this fight.
He should win this fight. He should. But listen, we thought Craig Richards was going to beat Willie Hutchinson last time, didn't we? I think he started an overwhelming favourite in that fight. You know, if you look at Willie Hutchinson, the only loss on his record was to Lennox Clark, wasn't it? You look at the levels and you go, well, is that his level? Is that where he's at?
Yeah.
And, you know, he proved, you know...
But it would be a bigger surprise, though, wouldn't it? Irrespective of the fact that he's now got a former world title challenger on his record of wins now, it will be a bigger surprise if he does beat Boatsy than the fact he beat Craig Richards, won't it?
Yeah, without a doubt, yeah. I think that Joshua Boatsy is a much tougher assessment than it was, you know,
It's also important. I mean, it's very important for Josh, isn't it? Because Josh has been sitting around now. He's come over from Matchroom to Boxer. He left the Matchroom stable because he wanted to fight on Sky. He wanted to have bigger opportunities. He wanted to get his due opportunity. There was arguments and debates about whether he could have taken the Dimitri Bivol fight. He didn't want to take it because he didn't want to sign a longer contract with Matchroom. And all of that rumination that was going on was what was being said about Josh. He's taken some criticism for it. His performances prior to the Dan Aziz fight were a little bit off, weren't they? They weren't at the level that we thought. He was much better against Dan Aziz, which was an interesting domestic dust-up. I think it's important for Josh. You've got Beterbiev and Bivol fighting in October.
Yes.
And for Josh, he puts on a compelling performance against Hutchinson. Do you think he gets the winner of Beterbiev or Bivol, or do you think somewhere along the line he's going to still end up with Yard?
No. I think he gets the winner.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with Anthony Yard at the moment. It's quite disappointing, really, because the relationship has broke down with Frank Warren. Frank Warren's quite upset about it. He doesn't understand where it's come from. He's always looked after him. You know, got him those 2 world title shots. He's given him opportunity. And Anthony Yards chose to, you know, go down a different route and deal with things the way that he's dealing with it. But in that process, he puts himself on a sideline. And I think for Joshua Boatsy, he will be looking for the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol.
It's interesting with Yard because, I mean, the argument's about matching rights, isn't it? It's about whether, I have to say, if you haven't got a contract with someone, I'm not entirely sure how you can have matching rights, but that will be determined by someone else. It's difficult to see why Yard would want to have this fight with Frank, because I think Frank's got him good fights. I think he got him Kovalov early. Then potentially Yard was entitled to, and he got him Beterbiev.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't quite know why Tundi and whoever else around Anthony Yard is suggesting that Queensberry aren't the right one for him. But in the meantime, the world moves on. Anthony Yard isn't fighting, and Boatsy gets his opportunity. I'm really pleased for Anthony Kakachi. I think his performance against Joe Cordina, people were making the observation that Joe Cordina was tight at the weight and struggled, but I think Kakachi's performance was so compelling.
You can't take anything away from Kakachi. Yeah, I mean, that was a brilliant performance. I think he was an overwhelming underdog going into that one. You know, and he delivered. You know, he just went in there and he systematically broke him down and won the fight comfortably. You know, I think for Cordina, I think he was surprised at Kakachi and how strong he was actually. Yeah. You know, physically very strong. Not many knockouts on his record. I think he's got eight knockouts on his record. So I think he underestimated his power. But brilliant performance.
He was great.
Brilliant performance.
I mean, Cordina went into that fight with most people tipping him to win it, and Kakachi was just all over him.
Oh, he was just relentless.
Just relentless.
Yeah.
Josh Warrington, I mentioned at the top about his self-effacing observations about at a press conference that people will be surprised that he was here. I thought that Josh, you know, was running dry after Mauricio Lauer.
Yeah.
The first fight he was beaten. I think in the second fight, despite the clash of heads, I think he was getting beaten again.
Yeah.
you know, he beat his old nemesis Kiko Martinez, and I really thought that Lee Wood would do a number on Josh, and to be honest with you, irrespective of the fact that he cleaned him out in the end, Josh Warrington looked really good in that fight.
He really
just
did.
One moment's lack of concentration, which is what you'll say at this level that happens. But as far as being in the fight and really putting it on Lee Wood and making it difficult for Lee Wood, he really did, didn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. Listen, he was winning the fight up until that point. You know, I think no one expected him to perform the way that he did. What's he won? One out of his last 4 or 5. You know, I mean, he's mixed at a high caliber, but you just sense that maybe he's just starting to dip the performance. But that performance was brilliant.
Do you think by him going up from feather to super feather, it might make some difference for Josh, given the fact that maybe he's finding it difficult to take away?
He's been there a long time, Simon. You know, and he's not getting any younger. And when you get older, it's harder to maintain that weight. And I think that, you know, it'll be a good thing for him. But it just depends on what he's got left. We really don't know. But he deserves the opportunity.
Who do you think?
It's a tough call, but I'm going to go Kakachi. I think Kakachi, you know, it's the momentum's with him, and I just think Kakachi will probably get the job done inside the distance.
My heart sort of leans towards Josh Warrington because I like the personality, I like the manner in which he operates, and I think he's a very exciting and endearing fighter at times. But I think you are possibly right because of the momentum.
Yeah.
You can't ignore that there is 1 win out of 5 fights. You can't ignore that Lee Wood dropped him heavy, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, it's at the stage of their careers, and you look at where they're at. You know, Josh Warrington has been a fantastic ambassador for boxing. He really has. Give us many memorable nights, but you just feel that the timing's right for Kakachi.
Well, yeah, you feel like Kakachi now has arrived. It feels like a bit like when Lloyd Hunnigan beat Donald Curry. That was a shot in the arm that Lloyd went on and won the next 4 or 5 fights. Ultimately, he lost in the end to Marlon Starlin and then lost to Mark Breland. But he had that shot in the arm after beating Curry. I'm not suggesting that Joe Cordina was on the same level of Curry, but Kakachi's been around, missed out on opportunities for injury and a sporadic career, has now got that world title.
Win the world title, and elevates you to another level.
I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be loath to relinquish it. You see all the various promoters on the stage. Callis Howland, Ben Shalom, obviously Frank, because it's his intellectual capital. You've got to give a lot of credit to Queensberry because whatever other promoters haven't been and haven't done, the relationship with Seller, with Saudi, is now well cemented. It's now churning out fights everywhere. Queensberry were the intellectual capital behind this, but it's a good thing that you've now got all the major British fight promoters on the stage. Ben's there, which will be good for his business. Sky will be pleased with that because ultimately he's got fighters on the Saudi card now, and hopefully this will continue. And the Saudi money will continue to proliferate opportunities for the best fights to happen, right?
Listen, you've got to respect the vision, really, of Turkey Al Sheikh and the Saudis. You know, but what they're trying to do, you know, they're trying to create modern legacies and the best boxing, the best. And that's not with just one promoter, it's using all promoters. And, you know, the only winners are the boxing fans. Yeah. You know, you've got to respect that. And I think that, you know, we're in a time right now where we're going to get the best fighting the best. No politics, not about pay-per-view cuts, 60-40s, different promoters, everyone's working together. You know, it's a win-win for the boxing fans.
I mean, I've urged caution, which they don't like, which is what happens when the dynamics change and if the Saudis don't fancy doing it anymore, or if they want some economic reality in this, because all these fights are happening without any economic reality. There isn't any necessity for the Saudis to make money out of these events. That isn't the end game. It might be the end game in the longer term, but in the medium term, they're not bothered about how much money these events cost. And it'll be interesting to see if it has a long-term detrimental effect, because what you're doing is you're raising the expectation levels of what fighters can get paid. And when I said that before, other people deliberately misinterpreted it, because it's not that I don't think that making fights now is valuable. I just worry that if you change the dynamics of what people think they should get paid, all of a sudden, when that money finds its level, or it wants to be more economically viable, i.e., they want to make money from these events, and so they're not going to pay, you know, a featherweight $800,000 for winning a world title. They won't pay that. Right? They'll pay something more akin to what the market has paid previously. It'll be interesting to see if that then harms the sport. And also, of course, you know, the real benefit is that we are now seeing all of these fights.
Yeah.
So I think when you have a conversation about something, you look at the pros and cons, and right now, all the pros are evident.
Oh, absolutely. Listen.
They're all evident. All the best fights are being made, and no one's being stood on the sideline.
Yeah.
And waiting about some politics about who has what with who.
No.
Money's cleansed it all.
I think that the Saudis, they're investing, like you say. I think that it will plateau. I think that, you know, the purses will come down, but at the moment it's all about the vision and you know, showing that they've got an appetite for boxing, and it's going to be here for some time.
And I like it. I have to say, and it's not me disappearing into a sycophantic mode, you've got to give credit where credit's due. I still question the atmosphere. That has nothing to do with xenophobia. It has everything to do with the fact that ultimately the atmosphere needs to build, and I think it probably will. I question the motivations behind the money, but that's the same in every sport. I've questioned it in football. I question it now in boxing, because I want to make sure that the value of sport is preserved, rather than the agenda of somebody wanting to buy into sport and create something for themselves. But we are in a situation where the opportunities for these fights are remarkable, and I enjoy it, and I think that the format creation was my point I was about to make, and the thinking of building a different format of relationships where you've got league tables and you've potentially got tribalism like other sports have got, is a way to create a new format, which is what the Saudis are doing, and I think that's bloody clever and blue sky thinking, and I like it.
And you've got to respect the vision that they've got as well. Like you say, it's not just in Saudi Arabia these fights are happening. You know, we've got one in LA coming up with Terence Crawford.
Well,
you know, we've got Wembley, and I think that they're looking to go globally as well. So, you know.
Well, if you want brand representation and you want people to look at you through a prism of seeing that you're valuable to something, well, you don't take everything away from them and then only show events in your own country. You do the clever thing, which is put events on in London, put events on in America, and then you'll get the hearts and minds of the people that you want to make sure that people go, that's a great thing they're doing over there. Maybe I do want to go and visit their country. Maybe I do want to have a different attitude towards them, full stop. We saw the return of Sonny Edwards.
Yes.
You know, obviously, he lost his last fight against Bam Rodriguez. Back in the groove?
Listen, yeah, absolutely. I think it was a punch-perfect performance up until that 6th round when they had a terrible clash of heads. He picked up a terrible cut, very, very unfortunate. You know, the fight was stopped in the 8th round. They went to the scorecards, but he dominated. You know, I think it was a punch-perfect performance. He's a great little fighter, Sonny Edwards. Very unfortunate with a cut. That will put him out for some time, but I think his ultimate goal is to rematch Bam Rodriguez. I think Bam Rodriguez, so he's looking to unify the titles. He's looking to go up possibly a Inoue. There's talk of him fighting a Inoue, moving up in weight. So, you know, Sonny is chasing, but that was a great performance. It's just very unfortunate. That cut was terrible. It's going to take some time.
But as it was going through that course of that fight, given the manner in which Sonny approached the fight, given the outcomes during the fight, it would have been his fight.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway.
He won every round. I mean, it was a punch-perfect performance, like I say. You know, for the boxing purist, it's brilliant to watch. You know, the way he was moving around the ring, utilising the ring, was perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing something before we close the show that I just can't find myself having one single scintilla of interest in, which is the Bridgerweight division. I understand why Lawrence has gone into it, and fair play to him for going over there and beating Rosinski the way he did, right?
Yeah.
He did the job, and so he should, because he's a better fighter.
Yeah.
In a weight class that now gives him the opportunity to say he's a 2-weight world champion, and I understand all that. I cannot make any case for a potential suggestion from Mauricio Suleiman of the WBC that there would be any interest in Lawrence Okolie fighting the fighter formerly known as Deontay Wilder.
I find it very sad, actually. You know, I think that we saw Deontay Wilder last time out against Zhale Zhang, and he was a shadow of his former self. It was very sad. You know, even against Joseph Parker, you know, the fight has definitely left him, and you want to see him just retire now, enjoy retirement, go and spend some time with the family, do what you got to do. He's got bundles of money in the bank. I just find it very sad. I know he weighed, 15 stone 2 when he boxed Zhale Zhang, so you know he fits into that category, but I just think it's very sad that, you know, he still wants to continue, because, you know, I think Lawrence right now would flatten him.
It doesn't look like there's anything left from Deontay Wilder, which, you know, some people will argue that technically he wasn't a great fighter. I remember having that debate with Malik Scott, his trainer.
Yeah.
And the power was the equaliser. But the fights with Tyson Fury appear to have taken everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
And for his reputation, I mean, I don't know if his bank balance needs it. Maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe it's easy to say
I don't think
if
it's
someone's
about
throwing you a bag
balance.
of money. But
yeah.
when you fought for the heavyweight championship of the world and you've occupied the kind of recognition and engagement that he's had, going to fight in a new division which doesn't have much depth attached to it, I don't see the necessity.
You're just damaging your legacy, you know. I think that we're at that stage now where you go, look, retire now. You know, we've seen you in your last couple of fights, you know, really poor performances. The fight has clearly left you. Like you said, the trilogy with Tyson Fury clearly took it out of him. And I think it'll be a sad spectacle. I really do. You know, like, he's got no self-belief now. You know, he wasn't stepping in. He's gun shy. He wasn't throwing any punches. You know, the Deontay Wilder of old technically was never any good. Yeah. But, you know, he fought with his heart on his sleeve, and, you know, he let his hands go. He was very aggressive, stepped in with his shots a lot.
The power.
All of that's gone. Yeah. It's not coming back. And I think that, I think it'd be a sad spectacle if we see him against the Coley. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen.
I can see the benefits of Lawrence, but I see no benefit besides maybe a few extra noughts on his bank balance, but not of any great significance, because Deontay Wilder, for me now, leaves the sport with his last two fights not defining him. And if he goes on to a third one in the bridgerweights and loses to Lawrence Coley, people will look at him through a different prism than perhaps they already do now. Anyway, Spence, that's it for episode 79. I am hoping to be hanging around rather than having to go back to Germany. I have mixed emotions because I want to go. I'm due to go back if England win.
Right.
But I don't want to go back. So I don't want England to lose. But I've had enough of Germany and Jim and all that crowd. I'm quite happy to be back in England. I don't mean that, Jim.